Hello again. I think that anybody with even a scrap of historical knowledge is aware that killing Jews and driving them from their homes has been a pretty popular pastime in Europe and indeed other parts of the world since the fall of Israel in the first century AD. It has pretty generally been assumed that you can kill Jews and the chances are that nothing will happen to you. This is why so many people have felt able to launch pogroms and carry out massacres, of course, over the last couple of thousand years. In effect, Jewish lives had little value. You might have thought that following the Holocaust and the death of around 6 million Jews, that would have changed, that the sheer scale of the massacre would have prompted people to reconsider the situation and perhaps think it was time to change the calculus a little. But no. The response of the Allies, that is to say Britain and the United States, to the Holocaust was to put some of those who had carried out the murders on trial and eventually to hang 500 of them. In other words, for every 12,000 Jews who had been killed, one life was exacted in return. That, put plainly, was the calculus. One non-Jewish life was equal to 12,000 Jewish lives. In effect, the people responsible for the Holocaust had got off very lightly indeed. There was nothing there to cause any nation or group to think twice about massacring Jews in the future. There was no deterrent at all to pogroms or persecution. I hope that this is clear. In the late 1940s, it had been made obvious to the world that 12,000 Jewish lives were seen as being equal to the life of just one of their enemies. When the State of Israel was founded in 1948, a top priority was to demonstrate to the world that this was not how things were going to be in the future. Otherwise, pogroms and massacres would continue because Jewish lives were held to be so cheap. The situation in the modern world is that for years, any nation or group which kills Jews simply because they are Jews knows that retribution will fall upon them and that the vengeance will be terrible. Instead of 12,000 Jewish lives being equivalent to one life of the enemies of the Jewish people, each Jewish life is now worth between 10 and 100 lives. It is this sharp reversal of the previous state of affairs which has meant that nobody these days feels that it is a wise idea to burn down a synagogue anywhere in the world or to kill a bunch of Jewish people just because they are Jews. They know that Israel will revenge the lives of those people and that at least 10 times as many people will be killed in response. Fire a rocket into northern Israel from Lebanon and a Jew is killed. You know that between 10 and 100 people will lose their lives in response, because that is now the going rate for Jewish lives. The Houthi in Yemen fired loads and loads of rockets at Israel, and the Israelis didn't respond. They just let them get on with it because the Israeli defence system, the Iron Dome, took out all those missiles. As soon as one of those missiles got through, though, and killed a Jew in Israel, there was an immediate response, which was that 100 people were killed in Yemen as a result. In general, this policy, though horribly brutal, has been effective in that nobody in the world these days feels inclined to carry out massacres of Jews. It still happens very occasionally, and when it does, Israel pulls out all the stops to ensure that far more lives are lost in their counterattack. I realise that this all sounds very harsh, but it does seem to have done the trick. And although there are still many people in the world who dislike Jews, they tend these days to limit themselves to unpleasant words rather than lethal actions. It is this new calculation relating to the relative value of Jewish lives which has brought about this state of affairs.